Hello there. Today I'm going to review up a breeding video and I'm going to try and help you guys learn how to breed. I found this on the Patreon, so it hopefully should help you out here. I'll read it out for you since it might be hard to see. I don't know. It's late. I'm tired, but I finished the new nesting changes, so I want to write it down before I go to bed. The main change to nesting genetics is the introduction of recessive genes. Recessives are something I wanted to do in Legacy, but couldn't as it would have required a wipe of all dragons and I didn't want to do that. So I decided to wait until 1.0 to implement it. Recessive genes will be part of each dragon in update 1.0.0. The dominant gene is what's used by the game to grant your stat bonuses. The recessive gene is strictly for nesting and only exists to be passed down to your eggs, but it allows for a more in-depth nesting system. When the player spawns into the game will assign one of three dominant genes, E, D-, or D, and one of the six recessive genes, E, D-, D, D+, C-, or C. This equates to anywhere from a 0.0 to 2% stat bonuses for fresh spawn in, keeping new players pretty equal in stats, and through nesting they could pass on the plus 5% genes in their first generation nest. So the random spawn stats have been lowered to make fresh spawns more equal and to make spawn cycling for better stats not something worthwhile. So how does this work? Bloodline quality is more important than ever. The first step in upstatting will be to increase the bloodline quality by nesting unrelated dragons. With the points invested in the nesting, formerly breeding tree, the more points, the higher the chance of increasing the bloodline quality. It is no longer automatic. E plus E equals D. You now need E plus 1 to 3 points in social, formerly fertile, by each parent. A good dice roll to equal D. Once you have a D plus D nesting pair, you can upstat their genes, but with the changes before stats would auto upstat if D plus D were combined, but now D plus D will only equal D plus. If the BQ tier is D or higher, in other words, bloodline quality acts as a clamp for upstatting. DBQ won't be able to upstat D plus and D plus health to C minus. That requires CBQ. The best CBQ can upstat its C plus. A++ is possible without the nurse dragon, but requires ABQ for both parents, A plus A genes, and maxed out nesting tree for both parents. And even then, you need a crit. You can further increase this chance with the crafting pearl. So your first step in upstatting your dragons will be nesting for better bloodline quality to increase your cap. Then focus on increasing your social prowess by investing points in the nesting tree. Make sure to only nest with the player who has invested points in the nesting tree. Then you can begin upstatting your genes and bloodline quality even further. Recessive genes are a bit of a wild card. They do not require points in nesting to pass on. and can become dominant in your offspring. But the downside is that they are hidden and you don't know what they are. There are plans for the Broodwatcher to be able to see recessive genes, but we'll see. One other thing I want to mention, the lineage UI in the character panel will eventually be able to display the genetics card of your parents and grandparents on mouse hover. I'm hoping to have that in by 1.02 or 1.0.3. I hope you enjoyed the info. As Yoda once said, pass on what you have learned. Here's another small tidbit of information about skin inheritance. Update 1.0 is going to bring with it some changes to how skins work and how skins are inherited. Aside from skin crafting, which is completely different from something I'll talk about later, skin inheritance and gene inheritance upstatting both have changed as well to include recessive genes. Recessive genes are inherited from the egg's parents, whichever gene was passed by the parents, which did not get chosen as the dominant, is saved to the recessive. Each parent has a set of dominant and recessive genes, and a pair of dominant and recessive genes. If a father passes his iconic dominant skin and the mother passes his melanistic recessive skin, the egg will be iconic skin, dom with the melanistic, or the egg will be a iconic skin dominant with the melanistic saved as recessive. Each parent has two possible skin genes to pass on, which may or may not be the same skin. But the parent will only pass one each. So if each parent had two different skins, that's a total of 4 skins in their gene pool, which they could pass one to each of their eggs. Which skin passes depends on skin rarity. There are 6 rarities: common, uncommon, rare, hybrid, exotic, and legendary. The more rare a skin is, the more recessive it is when nesting. If the father is iconic D and iconic R, then no matter what, he's going to pass on the iconic, which is a common skin and very dominant. If the mother was a melanistic D and melanistic R, she would pass on Mela to the egg. The egg would be iconic with Mela recessive. If 2 iconic Mela dragons nested together, the possibilities would be iconic plus iconic is iconic DR, iconic plus melanistic, iconic D, melanistic R. And then melanistic and melanistic is melanistic. Anytime 2 skins are passed onto the egg of the same rarity, a dragon's dominance trait comes in to help select the skin. The parent with more dominance will get weighted advantage in their skin passing. This means it'll be easier to pass on recessive skins without the dominant mutation. The dominant skins with the dominant mutation, and the dominant skins with the dominant mutation. The skin inheritance system is changing for the better. We're making the skin, the base skin genetic, and the skin customization something for the players to craft themselves. It's going to be awesome. Update 1.0.1 1.0 will bring the new dominant recessive breeding upstanding and skin inheritance system. The 1.0.2 Broodwatcher update will bring more changes to the breeding system. Finally, skin crafting will arrive in update 1.0.3. Thank you for your support. So, breeding is a very complicated situation, and the best way I can explain breeding is you take RNG. Think of it as RNG or dice. I think of it as a nat 20 dice, like, yeah. And so the gist of it is that there are recessive genes and then there is dominant genes. There's a chance to get recessive genes to help increase the ability to get better genes, but it can be a very rare chance. It varies, since recessive is rarer than dominant. Now, if you were to take two people or two dragons together, they both have some genes that are maybe both D's. If one were to get a nat 20 with a D and a D, it'll end up becoming a C. But most of the time it doesn't become a C, does it? So, nat 20s are pretty rare to get, similar to how dice is. And there's also a basic RNG on the grades. There are 17 different types of stats. Think of it like this. When a baby is born, or, well, in an egg, there are dice rolling on each of them. And the dice depends on the parents. If they have the nesting thing, think of it as, oh, I get a +1 on this nat 20 dice. So it increases the chance of getting a crit. There's also, if you add the dominant gene, it could be like, oh, now I have a +2 on this. And once the Nurse Dragon comes out, or Broodwatcher, there's a +3. So it's even better. As long as they're the one that's taking care of the eggs. So the Nurse Dragon increases the chance of critting. And in that way, you get a higher chance of getting better stats. And now, there's also the skin genetics. Currently, how the skin genetics works is, if you consider rarity or percentage of rarity, for example, a iconic skin is common, meaning you probably have a 90% chance of getting the iconic skin over a rarer skin, such as crimson or melanistic. Now, if you were breeding iconic and a leucistic, or no, iconic and melanistic, that person has somewhere around a 10% chance of getting a melanistic. If you were breeding crimson and leucistic, the person has a 90% chance of getting crimson, because leucistic is extremely rare and very hard to breed in. So that is the basic gist of that, and I will show you an example of the breeding skin system in a moment here. Here is a great example how people were to explain the skin breeding system. So there has been some changes in how skin breeding works, and all the talk of dominant and recessive genetics sounds confusing. Now, allow me to try to explain. Each skin comes in a rarity of common to legendary, and your dragon carries genes for 2 skins, but only one gets shown off on your dragon, and the other stays a hidden trait that might be passed down to your hatchlings. So do you know what skin you're going to end up with when you get nested, if each parent might be passing you secret colors? Each parent has roughly a 50-50 chance of passing you either their visual skin dominant or their hidden skin recessive. Once it's determined which skins you'll be inheriting, the rarer skin becomes your hidden skin, and the more common skin becomes your visual skin. If 2 skins you inherit are the same rarity, then it's going to come down to a rough 50-50 chance which one you look like and which one is hidden. This can be affected by your parents' mutation points. So here's an example right here. So a crimson dragon, and I guess that's like iconic. The children will likely have the iconic and the crimson recessive right here. Iconic skins are a common skin, while white, gray, black, and red, or leucistic, luminian, melanistic, and crimson are all of exotic rarity. If you breed double iconic and double crimson, crimson is the rarer skin and will be hidden if the hatchlings inherit both iconic and crimson. Every hatchling these 2 dragons have will look iconic, but will secretly carry the red crimson skin to pass on when they have hatchlings. But what about the dragons that aren't double skins? What if the parents have different visual dominant and hidden recessive skins? Let's take a look from the hatchlings from the previous example. So there's a chance to get crimson double, but it's very rare since these parents have recessive crimson skin right here. But a lot of the times you'll get these ones, and then sometimes you'll get a double iconic. Each of these parents carries both iconic and crimson skins. Each parent has roughly 50-50 chance to pass either iconic or crimson. If these 2 dragons nest of 4 hatchlings on average, half of them would inherit iconic and one parent from one parent, and crimson on the other. Since crimson is rare, it'll be hidden recessive skin of the 2. One hatchling would inherit iconic from both parents, and one would inherit crimson from both. From looking at the nest, it looks like two iconic parents hatched three iconic hatchlings and a crimson one. How strange. Now, what if a iconic with a hidden crimson nested with another exotic skin? So there would be a chance of getting like this. So this is probably like the gray skin, and this one has a recessive exotic skin. So there's a chance to either get leucistic or crimson. From the institute right here. But it varies. And there is also a chance to get iconic with a recessive leucistic. Probably even a recessive crimson too. I'm not entirely sure yet. Two of the hatchlings would look like the dominant iconic carrying the recessive gray. But the other two hatchlings are inheriting two different exotic colors. Each of those exotic hatchlings have a 50-50 chance of being either crimson or carrying gray, or gray and carrying crimson. So from looking at the nest in iconic, and iconic is nesting with an exotic, half the hatchlings are iconic and half the hatchlings are either gray or red with their grandparent. Now let's get it really complicated. What if we have a iconic exotic mix and a exotic mix? So this iconic has gray skin. This crimson has melanistic. So this is iconic with crimson. This is iconic with melanistic. There's a chance of getting crimson and leucistic on this one. Same with the recessive. There's a chance of getting leucistic and melanistic. Same with the recessive. Half the hatchlings will have dominant iconic skin with one of the other parents' exotic colors as their hidden recessive. The other half of the nest would be guaranteed to have or carry the iconic's parent in exotic, while also carrying one of the exotic dragon skin. From looking at the nest, half the hatchlings are iconic and the other half is one of these exotic colors. And this is a blank sheet. So this is also, it can also happen with stats. This is very similar with stats too. The dice example was a easier way for me to explain it to you. So I hoped it helped. And I hope this video helps you a lot. Thank you for watching. Peace out.